This is Medical Device Legal News. Today is June 6, 2023. I'm Sam Bernstein. On June 1st, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Arun G. Rao delivered remarks at the International Bar Association's 9th Annual World Life Sciences Conference. Arun discussed the DOJ's and the Consumer Protection Branch's enforcement activities in the opioid space, as well as against medical device manufacturers. Arun also highlighted the DOJ's voluntary self-disclosure policies and indicated that other branches of the DOJ are in the process of adopting or have adopted additional self-disclosure policies. On June 2nd, the FDA released updated guidance on the Q Submission program, which is a program under which manufacturers can request feedback in writing or in a meeting regarding potential marketing submissions, including IDEs, PMAs, HDEs, de novo requests, 510Ks, CLIA waiver applications, accessory classification requests, certain INDs and BLAs, as well as regarding certain other matters. As you're aware, the FDA's draft guidance documents do not establish legally enforceable responsibilities, and if and when finalized, rather will describe what the agency's current thinking is on a topic. It should be viewed only as recommendations. This guidance provides that pre-submission requests should include specific questions regarding review topics relevant to a planned submission. The guidance includes examples of specific questions relevant to review topics and reiterates that a pre-sub is not intended as a pre-review of an intended submission or of a pre-review of data. The guidance recommends early interaction with the FDA before execution of planned testing, including clinical studies. Issues raised by the FDA in a pre-sub do not necessarily obligate requesters in future submissions, and a pre-sub also does not guarantee favorable future decisions. However, future marketing submissions should appropriately reference applicable Q subs and address how the submission addresses the prior feedback received from FDA. FDA is also requesting requesters use a pre-sub to plan future accessory classification requests, as well as for predetermined change control plans. As you may recall, we spoke a few weeks ago about the FDA's guidance on predetermined change control plans, which are plans submitted in a marketing submission that allow changes to a product based on machine learning or AI that would otherwise require a new submission, but is otherwise covered by the predetermined change control plan. The guidance also addresses submission issue requests, or SIRs, which are requests for feedback or a meeting to address issues identified in a marketing submission hold letter and similar letters, including requests for additional information. While SIRs can be used to discuss a planned approach, they are not intended as a pre-review of an intended formal response or to discuss final decision letters, for which there's a separate process. The guidance also addresses study risk determination requests to determine whether a planned study is a significant risk, non-significant risk, or study exempt from IDE requirements. As a reminder, FDA expects for non-exempt studies sponsors to make an initial risk determination and present it to an IRB. In addition, the guidance addresses informational meeting requests, which request to share information without the expectation of receiving feedback from the FDA. The guidance also addresses certain other types of Q submissions, including tracking interactions regarding PMA Day 100 meetings, agreement and determination meetings, breakthrough device submissions, safer technology program submissions, and accessory clarification requests. The FDA indicated that if an interaction does not necessarily satisfy an existing Q subtype, the FDA may use an informational meeting Q sub to track those interactions. And they gave a few examples of those types of topics, which may include feedback on cross-cutting policy matters, recognition of publicly accessible genetic variant databases, requests for feedback on design elements of a study outside of the scope of a pre-sub, such as for an IDE exempt study, combination product agreement meetings, and feedback related to compliance actions. The guidance also provides an overview of the information to be included in a Q-sub cover letter and additional information that should be included in certain types of Q-sub requests. If a meeting is requested, the guidance provides that the request should include a draft agenda, the meeting format, 3 or more preferred dates and times, and the planned attendees. Slides should also be provided at least 2 days before the meeting. The requester is also required to draft and submit meeting minutes of the meeting within 15 days. And as a reminder, meetings cannot be recorded by participants without express FDA permission, which is typically not granted. Sample meeting minutes as well are also included in the guidance. Requesters should ensure that they designate applicable information as commercially confidential or a trade secret before disclosing it in a Q-sub or pre-sub meeting to minimize the risk of disclosure as a result of a FOIA request. As you may be aware, these meetings are requestable via FOIA, and accordingly, you should take protective measures before submitting confidential proprietary information to the FDA. While I don't typically cover patent cases in this newscast, on June 1st, an unusual result occurred in C.R. Bart's longstanding patent dispute with AngioDynamics regarding vascular access ports used for power injections, for which C.R. Bart had asserted patents and initiated an infringement action against AngioDynamics. In a second infringement trial, which followed a first trial after a circuit court reversed the lower court's patent invalidity findings in the first trial, the same judge, overturned a blanket jury verdict in the second trial and found for AngioDynamics, holding for the second time that C.R. Bart's patents were invalid as a matter of law because they did not recite patent-eligible subject matter, among other decisions. This is an interesting and an unusual case because the judge had initially determined in the first proceeding that the patents were invalid. It was appealed. The circuit court effectively remanded with directions for a trial to occur before the judge makes a decision on invalidity. And then at the end of the case, the jury found for C.R. Bard, and the judge overturned the jury's findings and found again that C.R. Bard's patents were invalid. So particularly unusual path. It's unclear if we've seen the end of this case, but wanted to highlight this case due to its unusual nature. On May 25th, Deanna Burr, a licensed nurse practitioner, pled guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud by submitting claims to Medicare for medically unnecessary durable medical equipment and certain procedure codes. The allegations included that the practice had a protocol order for all patients, which included 3 evaluations a week, over a dozen x-rays, and the issuance of multiple sets of durable medical equipment. The DOJ alleged that much of the DME, which was billed to Medicare and TRICARE, was determined to be medically unnecessary. Burr faces up to 5 years in prison, $250,000 in fines, restitution, and 3 years of post-imprisonment supervision. While this case involves a provider-developed protocol, which included the prescription of certain DME, manufacturers frequently provide customers with billing and coding information, which may include diagnosis codes. Manufacturers should exercise caution in providing guidance to their customers regarding establishing the medical necessity of using their products, including recommending diagnosis codes to support the use of their products. It is generally considered the practice of medicine to diagnose a patient, determine whether a particular medical device is medically necessary for a patient. Accordingly, manufacturers should exercise significant caution in their communications to customers regarding billing and coding, and ensure that they clarify that customers should exercise their independent medical judgment in diagnosing a patient, assigning a diagnosis code, and determining the medical necessity of utilizing a particular medical device. These concerns are heightened for DME POS suppliers that submit claims directly to Medicare. In particular, DME POS suppliers should never alter diagnosis codes provided by an ordering physician, or otherwise attempt to manipulate the medical necessity determination made by an ordering physician. Instead, DME POS suppliers should seek to educate ordering physicians regarding third-party payer requirements, as well as encourage ordering physicians to appropriately document the basis of medical necessity in the medical record. While used by some practices, the use of protocol orders in the absence of an independent determination of medical necessity for each patient does raise potential fraud and abuse concerns, particularly in light of the fact that most third-party payers require the medical record to substantiate the medical necessity of items and services provided to a patient. Accordingly, if medical manufacturers become aware of a particular customer that uses a protocol order to order its product, the medical device manufacturer should discuss with the customer whether or not individual diagnostic determinations are being made, and seek to ensure that the physicians are appropriately documenting the basis for the medical necessity in the medical record, particularly if the manufacturer is a DME POS supplier. On May 25th, Christopher Margay was sentenced to 65 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, in order to pay over $10 million for conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud by fraudulently selling orders for durable medical equipment. Margay's co-defendant, Matthew Taylor Witowski, was previously sentenced to 60 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, in order to pay over $12 million. The DOJ alleged that by using a call center Witowski operated in the Dominican Republic and a marketing company called True Prospects Marketing, Margate illegally generated and purchased fraudulent DME orders and sold those orders to pharmacies and DME suppliers, resulting in over $7 million of fraudulent Medicare claims. Many of the orders allegedly used the names and PHI of Medicare beneficiaries without their authorization or knowledge, and included the falsified signatures and professional information of doctors and other healthcare providers. This is another example of a case involving fraudulent DME POS supplier orders and an associated fraudulent marketing company. Manufacturers should exercise caution and conduct appropriate due diligence when engaging marketing companies to ensure that marketing companies are operating in a compliant manner and not engaging in fraudulent practices. Moreover, manufacturers should not purchase orders from marketing companies, but rather should only engage marketing companies to provide bona fide marketing services on their behalf. On May 25th, the default judgment was entered against AZ Diabetic Supply, another DME supplier, under the False Claims Act in an amount in excess of $12 million. AZ Diabetic Supply allegedly purchased prescriptions for durable medical equipment from Real-Time Consulting and Marketing, Quality RX Solutions, and LPI Media. Real-Time allegedly purchased Medicare beneficiary contact information from targeted advertisers, had representatives call up patients to see if they were interested in receiving DME at little to no cost, and then sought a prescription for the patient's primary care physician. Real-Time would then allegedly sell the prescriptions to DME POS suppliers for the orders to be fulfilled. AZ Diabetic allegedly paid a fee to Real-Time for each prescription that varied based on the price of the DME brace prescribed, allegedly in violation of the anti-kickback statute. When Medicare denied reimbursement, Real-Time allegedly would provide a substitute prescription to AZ Diabetic. LPI allegedly purchased leads from Real-Time and paid telemedicine doctors to write DME prescriptions, which were then sold to AZ Diabetic. The owner of AZ Diabetic, Hersham Zagal, filed an answer in response to the DOJ's complaint that named him individually on his own behalf, and that matter is still pending. This is another example of a False Claims Act case against a DME supplier for purchasing prescriptions. DME suppliers should be on notice that the federal government is aggressively prosecuting DME POS suppliers for purchasing prescriptions in violation of the anti-kickback statute and the False Claims Act. Companies should also ensure that they are comfortable with the marketing company that they have engaged and that they have an appropriate compliance program and are not engaging in similar types of activities. On May 24th, the FDA released questions and answer guidance on the use of whole slide imaging in non-clinical toxicology studies. The guidance addresses the management and use of whole slide images during histopathology assessment, pathology peer review, performed for good laboratory practice compliance, non-clinical toxicology studies using non-human species. The guidance primarily addresses appropriate documentation practices, including maintaining raw digital slides, requirements to maintain the original glass slides, establishing written procedures for whole slide imaging processes and system validation, Part 11 compliance, data integrity measures, and ensuring that the pathology report appropriately reflects whether the glass slides or image slides were evaluated. On May 26th, the FDA released guidance on non-clinical performance testing of tissue containment systems used doing power morcellation procedures. The guidance applies to both gynecologic and general use of tissue containment systems used during the excision of benign tissue to minimize the risk of spread of potentially cancerous and/or benign tissue. The guidance addresses recommendations for non-clinical test methods to help manufacturers support a 510(k) substantial equivalence determination, as well as to comply with the special controls applicable to these types of devices, which require non-clinical performance data. Thank you for joining me this week for Medical Device Legal News. I'm Sam Bernstein, partner of McGuire-Woods Healthcare Group. I'd also like to thank my colleague Sophie Morris for helping to make today's program possible.